what we did in the first year. So this is the skull, and you can see that in the skull, what we have is the bones that makes up the cranium, as well as the facial part. But really, for the skull, we need to have the mandible bone attached to the cranium. But when we remove the mandible, that's where we're going to have what we call the cranium. So there's a difference here. So if we have a mandible attached to this the upper part, then what we have combined is what we call the skull. So really, we want to talk about the skull and see how we can go about it, and I'm sure by now you would have studied too. Okay, so what we need to know is that the skull, we have bones that makes up the skull. We have the cranium part, the facial part, and probably to add the mandible in the picture. But really, this time around, mandible is not very much important, but it will be important as soon as we go. So the skull is the skeleton of the head, as I said, and consists of internal and external tables. So when you say internal and external tables, we must know what it is. Then between these two tables, that's where we find the two sponge, the sponge layer. So the table we're talking about the upper part of the skull and the down part. When you get the bone, you hold it on the two sides. Now the middle part is a sponge bone that has holes all over. So that's what we mean. So when you say the table, we're simply talking about the bone when you hold it in your hand, the upper part and the lower part. Now on the middle there, that's why we have the part called the diploid. Okay, and then we can also talk about yeah, as I said, we have the cranium and the facial. So we need to know that we have a cranium and a facial. And then also we need to know that the cranium is where the brain sits or resides or actually found. So in the cranium, we're going to find the brain. Not only the brain, also the meninges are going to be found there. Soon enough, we're going to discover to say there is a very important part of the cranium where if you hit someone with your blow or anything that you hit someone, they can easily die because there's an important structure that passes there. We'll discover soon as we go in our discussion. And then we should also know that from the cranium, we can have muscles that can attach there. Okay, we can have muscles that attach there, and those are the muscles that goes to the neck, and some of them they go to the face. Okay, so we need to know also that very high huge. Then apart from that, we need to know how many bones makes up a skull. And these things we're just revising. We did them in second year. We need to know the bones that makes up a skull. As I said that if you put the mandible to the head, the bones of the head, then what we're going to have is a skull. Okay, the head, the cranium, the facial part, as well as the mandible will make up the skull. So basically, it has 22 bones, and these 22 bones will exclude the bones of the ear that are called the ossicles. Okay, that are called ossicles. That's what we need to know for now, and also that these are actually attached to each other via the joints called sutures. We learned about different types of joints. So one of them that is found actually predominantly in the skull are sutures. Okay, the joints that cannot move anyhow. But this is an exception of the mandible. In the skull, the only thing that we have that moves is the temporal mandibular joint. Henceforth, the mandible is an exception of having the sutures. And also, we might have some few synovial joints attached, rather found in the head. But for now, what we need to know is that of all these joints that we have, okay, all of them are sutures except for the joint that makes the lower jaw joining to cranium. Okay, that is what we call temporal mandibular joint. Um, Also, we need to know that these sutures, we need to know that the skull has the sutures, as we said, and also that the cartilaginous joints are also there. Probably I had forgotten talking about that. Important also to know. Right. And then we should also know that the sutures are immobile. The sutures are immobile. Okay. Um, all right. Sorry for that. There was a problem a bit. Right. Okay. All this I talked about. We need to go to something which is important for today. So subdivisions of the cranium, we said it has the upper part called calvaria. Okay. So we have the upper part called calvaria. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we have the upper part or upper dome called the calvaria, and this covers the cranial cavity, okay, which contains the brain. That needs to be known to us, and also the base. Okay, so the base is what is important in the head and neck, because most of the structures, more important structures, they come through the base. Okay, we can talk of the foramen magnum, the foramen magnum, and also some few other foramina that we can talk about in the base. So it's very important to know the base even before we start looking at other structures apart from osteology. All right. So we should also know that we have the lower anterior part, which is the the facial skeleton, as alluded to earlier. So you can see from the diagram there, we have the top part here made up by this bone that we're able to see here on top here. Probably this is a frontal bone, and we have these other bones. Of course, it's a bit distorted, but what we need to know is that here we have the cranium here, where the brain will sit, okay, and the upper part here is what we call the calvaria, okay, and then down here is what we call the base, and then here in front, where we're able to see the maxilla bone, is what we call the facial skeleton. You can see the mandible. Let me see if I can get them. You can see the mandible here down. So this mandible, if it is connected to these bones here, then what it makes up is what we call the skull. Okay, that's what makes up the skull. That's what makes up the skull. That's what makes up the skull. Right. So the base is made up of the physnoid bone, the temporal bone, and the occipital bone. Very high yield to know those parts. I mean, those bones that makes up the base of the skull. The base of the skull. And also we need to know what type of bones makes up the facial skeleton. we have the paired nasal bone, we have the palatine, the lacrimal bone, and the zygomatic bone, as well as the maxillary bones and the inferior nasal conchae, as well as the vomer. These ones will make up the facial skeleton. Okay, we'll make up the facial skeleton. Make up the facial skeleton. Okay, so we have the calvaria and the base. So when we talk about the calvaria and the base, we're going to talk about 8 bones. Some are paired and some are not paired. Those paired, we have the parietal bones that are on the left and right. We have the temporal bones. Okay, they are also on the left and the right. And then the unpaired, we have the frontal bone, which is the big one that makes up your forehead. The occipital, okay, the occipital bone actually makes up your hind part of your skull. So the hind part of your skull is made up by one unpaired bone called the occipital bone. And also we have the sphenoid bone. Where do we find the sphenoid bone? Just inferior to the frontal bone. That's where approximately the sphenoid bone is located. We'll look at it in a bit. The ethmoid bone is found probably just on the base of the skull, okay? On the base of the skull, probably making up the bed where the brain lies, but not really exactly, but somewhere there. We'll find it there. And so that is all about the bones that makes up the cranium, okay? What of the face? The face will have 14 bones. The cranium will have 14 bones. And these bones, some are paired and some are not paired. We need to know that very high yield. So we have paired maxillar bones that makes up the anterior part of your mouth, the top part of your mouth, where the upper teeth are lodged in. Okay, those are what we call maxillar bones. We have the zygomatic bones. Those that makes up your cheeks, the prominence in your cheeks. Those are zygomatic bones. So you need to know that the zygomatic bones, prominence that are shown in your cheeks, they're called the zygomatic bones. Then we have the nasal bones. These ones makes up your nose. Okay, the root of your nose is made up by the bones called the nasal bones. Very high yield to know these ones. And we have what we call the lacrimal bone. This one is a bit hard to see it, but it's a bit inside of, rather underneath the nose, probably, to be precise, somewhere there. Okay. Then we have the palatine bone. So there was a typo here. So it was supposed to be palatine bone. Is precisely found underneath the the nose, but really, if we were to say it properly, it is found in your mouth, on top roof of your mouth, your buccal cavity is the palatine bone. Yes, it makes up the hard part of your buccal cavity. Then we have what we call inferior nasal concha or conche, depending on who taught you anatomy. So you can call it anything for as long as you're able to remember that the inferior nasal concha is found just underneath the nose, just there. Okay, so very high yield to know. Unpaired bones, we have the mandible. This one you have to know, it's just alone, so it's not paired. Okay, and then we have a vomer bone, okay, which is not also paired. So from the facial skeleton, we only have 2 bones that are unpaired: the mandible and the vomer bone. The mandible and the vomer bone. Well, we also have to know, after knowing all the bones of the skull, we need also to know how many methods would we actually study the skull. The skull is a bit complex, and you're going to attest with me once we start our lectures. The head and neck is a bit complicated when it comes to DRA, but they will choose which way to go about it. Okay, either they will have to study the skull on the superior view, okay, or inferior or lateral view, posterior or anterior view. However, these darkened names here, they look to be complicated, but really things what we know. So norma verticalis means on top, basilaris means down there, lateralis on the other sides, right or left. Occipitalis, we know where the bone occipital found, so it is the behind or the dorsal part of your head. Frontalis, we know where the frontal bone is, so facially, we're going to face these ones. So these are methods that we can use to study the bones. That's the first aspect. The second aspect, we can choose, okay? The second aspect, we can actually choose to study the head inside, okay, which is also called internally or outside, okay, after removing the calvaria. By now we know what a calvaria is, the top part of your head. So you can open the normal verticularis, remove it, and you look at your skull from the inside there. That's what we mean when we say removing the calvaria. Okay, the calvaria, we're talking about the upper part, the normal verticalaris of your head. So you open it and remove it. Okay, and then you can look at the vault. So when you open the normal calvaria, you can start it inside there, or when you remove it, you look just on the base of the skull, since we said it has the calvaria part and the base. So if you open it, you can first of all start the calvaria part, which is called the vault, cranial vault. Okay, but you can also look down inside the skull, which is called the cranial base. Okay. The third option, you can study it by looking at the individual bone. You get the frontal bone, you study it, you put it aside. You get the parietal bones, you study them, you put them aside. You get the occipital, you study it just like that until you are done with all the bones, about 22 bones that we talked about. So very high yield to know that. Now, for us, looking at what we've so far done and looking at the time, we'll look at something which is a bit easier. So the way we planned these kind of discussions as a platform, we said it's better we start with things that are a bit easier to understand, even as we are going to something that is hard to understand. So we're going to approach the skull such that by now we're going to start with the normal verticularis, which is on the calvaria part, on the superior view of the skull. And then from there, we'll go to the occipitalis. From the occipitalis, we'll go to the lateralis. And then from there, we can go to the base. From the base, we'll go to the facial aspect of way. It will be a bit easier for us to follow the discussion. So far, so good. Maybe there's a question. I can accommodate a question. All right. So if there's no question, we'll go ahead and look at what we need to look at. Normal verticularis. So this is the top of the head. Okay, this is the top of the head. You can see. Let me see if I'm able to zoom. How do they even do it? I've forgotten how to zoom. Is it here? Okay. So this is the norma verticalis, or the superior part of the head. You can see as a way of orientation. This is the frontal bone here. Okay, the frontal bone, and then when we move down here, we can see two bones, two paired bones, and these two bones are called parietal bones. Then just down here, soon enough, we'll discover that there's a part that is not shown properly here, which is the occipital bone. So the normal verticalaris will have the frontal bone, will have the frontal bone, will have the parietal bones, and a part of the occipital bone, which is which will make up the normal the normal, I don't know, the normal verticalaris. From there, as I said, we have the squamous part of the frontal bone there, you can see. Okay, and then we're going to have those two, which are parietal bones. Okay, so there are the parietal bones, you can see. So from the frontal bone, I've just displayed the parietal bones, which are paired there, as you can see. There's one here and the other one there. Then from there, what we're going to have is this kind of small part grinned here down, on top here. So this is the part of the occipital bone. So the parietal bones, frontal bone, and the part of occipital bone will make what we call norma verticalaris. Norma verticalaris. All right. Now you can even see the sutures. All right. So this is the bone with the labeled, this is the skull with the labeled bones. This is the squamous part of the frontal bone. And then we have the parietal bones there. Okay, let me see if I can zoom in again. Okay. Right. So we have the squamous part of the frontal bone there. We have the parietal bone there. Okay, two of them. Then somewhere there behind, we'll look at it. We're going to see the occipital bone. But what we're interested in by now is the sutures. Okay, we have this suture that goes around, that goes from right to left or left to right, is what we call the coronal suture. We're just reminding each other here. And then we have another suture that goes from front to posterior, and it passes on the middle of your head or the skull. This one actually can extend going down, and since it is passing through the middle of your skull, is what will be known as the sagittal suture, because it is dividing the skull into two equal halves. So henceforth, it is called the sagittal suture. The sagittal suture. So I've shown you the sagittal suture there. You can see it. Okay. So this is the sagittal suture, and then there's this part here. Okay. This part, let me try to go back to well seen diagram. I want to show you something. Which one is that? Maybe I pick this one. All right. Now look at this. We are assuming that this skull is in the anatomical position. Now, this person is standing anatomically. Okay. So when this person is standing anatomically, if you start moving from the frontal bone, going backward like that, you pass the parietal bones. What you're going to notice is that on the middle here, your head is a bit bulged. You can try it on your own. Your head is a bit bulged here, just somewhere here. Okay. Actually, I'm able to feel it on my head. So that part where your head is a bit bulged, that's where you actually get the measurements of the height of someone just there, because a person is taller there where your head is a bit bulged somewhere there. And that part where the head is a bit taller is what we call a vertex. So the height of an individual is gotten from the vertex there. Okay. I remember we used to do this when we were young. Someone would say, no, I'm taller than you, and then you would stand. What we used to do is that either I'll elevate my head this side, I go the other side, so that everything else can be as high as the vertex there. So you can get the true height of someone just by the vertex there. Very high, huge. I don't know whether someone will teach you now, because that is just clinically important. Clinically important. Where was I? Should be here. So it's labeled here to say here is where you get the height of someone, the individual. Okay, very important. Very important. Very important. Here now we are on the dorsal part of your head. Okay, you can see this suture. Okay, that connects the two parietal bones to the occiput. Okay, so the occiput bone and the parietal are connected by this line called the lambdoid suture. And where the lambdoid suture as well as the sagittal suture are meeting is what we call lambda. Okay, is what we call the lambda. So the lambdoid suture and the lambda suture and the sagittal suture, where they meet, is what we call the lambda. Okay, the lambda. But in front here, can I go back? In front here, what we're going to have is the coronal suture meeting with the sagittal. Where they meet is where we're going to have the bregma. Okay, we're going to have the bregma. So very high huge to know about that. Here, these are prominence, okay, or they are called parietal eminence. So parietal eminence can also be known as the parietal tuber. So here in the parietal eminence is where the parietal bones starts ossification. So they start their ossification process here in the eminences of the parietals. Very high huge. Another thing that you need to know about the parietal eminence is that in the parietal eminence, the injuries, the head injuries are very much common because it's a bit brittle. Can you break anyway, anyhow? So when someone falls down, the first suspect that you would suspect are the parietal eminences. Someone would actually get injury in these ones. The bones can be broken or damaged. They are in the parietal eminences. Very important. So I've talked about two things that are important to know here. So clinically, we need to know that if someone falls and hits the head down, the first suspect of where the injury would take place are the parietal eminences. The second thing we need to know that in the parietal eminence is where the ossification of the parietal bones starts from. Very high huge, very high huge, very high huge. Okay. So we've labeled there to say in the parietal tuber or eminence is where ossification of parietal bones starts or begins. Very important to know. Very important to know. And then if you follow the sagittal suture as you are going to your lambda, you are going to notice two foramina there. Okay, and those two foramina are what we call parietal foraminas. Okay, two parietal foraminas somewhere there. And these two parietal foraminas are important because that's where we have emissary veins passing. Okay, so the emissary veins passes through the parietal foraminals, and also just on the middle here, you can see that this suture, okay, the sagittal suture is a bit straightened going backward there. Okay, it's a bit straightened backward going that side, starting from somewhere here. Hopefully you're able to see my cursor. So starting somewhere here and reaching somewhere here. The sagittal suture is a bit straightened. And why is it straightened here? This is important clinically. Okay, we're talking about clinically. So here where it is straightened from here up to there, it is important clinically because it indicates where the suture starts from. Okay, where the suture is developing from. Okay, when the bone starts closing up. What the first part that will close is just somewhere here, and that's where the formation of suture starts from. And again, when we take the measurements from these two foraminals to the lambda, okay, lambda point there where the lambdoid suture and the sagittal suture meets, we're going to understand to say the measurement from here, from the lambda to these two eminences is about 2.5 to 3 centimeters. Those are not in my notes, but that's what you need to know. We say from the eminences, from the foramina here to the lambda part, where the two sutures posterior meet, is about 2.5 to 3 centimeters to the foraminals, the parietal foraminals. And number three, we need to know that in the foraminals, what passes through are emissary veins. Emissary veins. Okay, there it is indicated, and we can see the lambda there. And then so from the lambda up to these foraminals that I'm talking about, is about 2.5 to 3 centimeters long. 2.5 to 3 centimeter long. And the point, the midpoint of the two foraminals, just there on the sagittal suture, is what we call obrion. Is what we call obrion, and I've told you the importance of the obrion. It just shows where the suture starts developing from. Okay, starts developing from, and the place is called the obrion or berion, depending on who taught you English. Yes. Okay. So important landmark indicates the formation of the sagittal suture. Please don't forget that. Very important. These kind of my slides, they are more of clinical importance and also the anatomical importance. So very important, very important, very important, very important. Right. After talking about whatever that we talked about, we can compare the fetal skull to the adult skull, and you can see that in the adult skull we only have sutures that are made up of bones, but in the fetal skull you can see these sutures are opened. Okay, they are opened. Probably they have cartilage. Yeah, it might be cartilage, but probably also fibro cartilage here, so that the brain cannot come out there. Okay, here we're going to have a bregma, but in the fetal skull we're going to have the what's that? The fontanelle. Okay, so here we're going to have the anterior fontanelle, and then posteriorly here on the adult skull we are going to have the lambda. Okay, lambda. But on the fetal skull, just posteriorly here, we are going to have what we call posterior fontanelle. So the posterior fontanelle of the neonate closes about 1 to 2 months approximately there, it would have closed, unless or otherwise there is a problem somewhere there, but it can go up to 4 months there, but there is a bit of some complications. All right. Now look at this. This sagittal suture, it is going somewhere there. It is actually even dividing the frontal bone there, but here you cannot see it because it has already closed. Now, what is the clinical importance? You might know that this part here, it closes in a month or 2 months of birth, but in some few individuals, about 5%, it would actually continue being there even as an adult. I think I've even seen some adults that have a bit of a depression just somewhere here on the forehead. So the first thing that you should suspect is that this sagittal suture is still existing there on the frontal bone. So you are going to have, eventually going to have two frontal bones even in the adult life. And now, clinically, this is important to know. Why? Because if someone sustains an injury from the head, when you take the CT scan, the CT scan will show a demarcation somewhere here. But as a medical personnel, you should know to say, okay, in some people, the suture would actually continue being there even in the adults. So that should be the first aspect. Not just because there is an opening there, you say, oh, this the suture that the suture that is even there in about 5% of people, even in their adulthood. All right, so you see there we have anterior fontanelle that crosses about 18 to 2 years, okay, after birth. That is very high huge to know. And we should also know that, why should we know? We should also know that, I think I've talked about this already. We should also know that the posterior fontanelle was closed somewhere 2 to 3 months after the birth. If they persist, then there should be a problem somewhere. But the cases are there where someone's fontanelles are still there. Right, the importances of these sutures and the fontanelles, okay, in the fetal skull. Number one, it allows the brain to grow. Embryologically, we learned that the brain grows at a faster rate. So it allows the brain to grow. That's the first important point that we need to get there. Let me try to see if I can write. Okay. So first point, you should know that they allow the brain to grow. Filtration, easy filtration. What does it mean? During the birth, okay, the head is a bit flexible. It is able to squeeze via the birth canal, okay, through the vagina to the outside the environment. So if these fontanelles, okay, if these fontanelles were to close so soon before the baby was to be born, then it was going to be hard for the baby to be delivered through the birth canal, unless or otherwise the baby is the mother undergoes the cesarean section. And also we need to know that the bones of the skull overlap with each other, okay, allowing molding. What do you mean molding? Molding is more like you are panel beating something so that it can be in a good shape. So as the baby grows, you can see that the two parietal bones will overlap, and we're going to have the occiput bone and the parietal bones and the whatever bones, the temporal bones will overlap. Why are they overlapping? They are accommodating the process of modeling of these bones, so they can be in a good shape for the sake of a good head. But however, I've seen babies that have bad heads even in their adulthood. It means that there was a problem during the process of the overlapping of the bones. Overlapping of the bones. Overlapping of the bones. Now, clinically significant. There are times when the baby is growing and the anterior fontanelle increases in size, okay? It bulges out. So what causes it to be bulged? It can indicate the increase in the intercranial pressure. It means that inside the cranium there is a lot of pressure. So therefore, the anterior fontanelle will be bulged. I've actually seen such kind of cases where the baby's fontanelle is bulged out, okay, which shows that there's a lot of pressure inside the cranium. Very important. And there are some times when this, instead of being bulged outside, it will make a depression. So that depression that is made there, it shows that or indicates that inside the cranium there is actually low pressure instead of high pressure. Okay, so I've talked about two things here. When the fontanelle, the anterior fontanelle is bulged, okay, is a bit bulged, it comes out like that. It shows that intercranial pressure is just too much. And if it is depressed, it is a bit down. We need to know that the intercranial pressure is very much decreased, such that there is a hazard for unit. Number three, we need to know that the anterior fontanelles, okay, you can do some measurements here because it makes a window where you can actually have an access to the brain. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. Actually, even the dehydration, when it is it goes down, you can even show that there's dehydration in the cranium. Okay, due to the low liquids. All right, so I said it also makes a window that can accommodate, that can give a physician a way of measuring some things. And who are those physicians? Those that do ultrasonography, okay, of brain. So ultrasonography of brain is, in most cases, not in most cases, is done on the anterior fontanelle of the baby, because you have what should I say? Those guys that performs the ultrasonograph, they do it from the anterior fontanelle. Okay, it provides an acoustic window. Okay, acoustic window that gives you an access to the brain, as I said, area. All right. So now this is the vault of the calvara. So we've just cut the head out and look at it inside there. Okay, we are looking at it inside there like that. Right. So what we are trying to see here, what we're trying to see here are some of few tiny details that we need to know here. And one of them is this kind of thing here that is in the squamous part of the frontal bone when you cut it there. And that is what we call frontal crest. So the frontal crest is where what we call falx cerebri attaches. Okay. So the falx cerebri attaches here, okay, anterior, and then posteriorly we're going to have some depressions there where they attach. Very high yield to know about that. Okay, so that's what we call a cranial vault inside here. So we're seeing the calvara from the inside. outside like that. Okay, from the inside outside like that. The inside outside. Right. Now you remember that here we are going to have a sagittal suture. From what we've talked about so far, a sagittal suture will be somewhere there. But inside the sagittal suture, what we're going to see is this depression here. Okay? So this depression is what we call sagittal sulcus. Sagittal sulcus. What is the importance of this sagittal sulcus? We are saying the falx cerebri attaches, and also it accommodates the dural venous sinus. So the dural venous sinus is found here on the sagittal sulcus, as well as the falx cerebri also attach from here. Also attach from here. All right. So here I'm just reaffirming on what we talked about. So we are inside the calvara. We have the frontal bone there. We have the two parietal bones and the occipital bone there. Unless there's a question, you can go ahead and ask your question. Otherwise, this is where we end it for today. Any question, or there's something that you want to see from the presentation?